Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three martinis coming up.
Really glad you're with us for the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. So much to talk about today, and I think you know what we're going to talk about. It's been a 3 going on 4 day story now at these riots in Los Angeles in response to perfectly legal ICE raids of criminal illegal aliens. And we'll also be talking about the media response. We'll be talking about the feckless Democratic leaders' response in California and beyond. For a little change of fare later on, we'll have some lighthearted reaction to Kirsten Gillibrand's new strategy for winning back the Senate for the Democrats in 2026. But Jim, before we truly dig in here, the media, the left, not giving us a break even on the weekends, and certainly not to start the week here.
Greg, I don't know about you. I liked it better when Battle of Los Angeles was a 2011 sci-fi film or a false alarm back in 1942 when they believed they had seen some sort of attack from the Japanese in the skies over LA, which of course gave that movie its title. So yeah, it's, looking ugly out there in LA. And for those wondering, no, this is not a rerun from January. The city is burning, but for a totally different reason this time.
Yeah, not a good one either. Totally preventable. But the left loves to light stuff on fire when they're not happy. And so that's what we're getting. And so we'll talk about all of that in just a moment. But first, we want to let you know that we are sponsored today by BetterHelp. So this is an ad for BetterHelp. And a lot of people, certainly on the left, but really seriously, a lot of people are going to need some counseling at different points in their lives. And right now, it just seems like there's a ton of people struggling with so many things. And so BetterHelp could easily be a great way to help. And specifically for men, a lot of men facing immense pressure these days to perform, to provide, to just keep it all together. If that sounds like you, BetterHelp might be the right solution at this time.
With more than 35,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served more than 5 million people all around the world. And it works with an App Store rating of 4.9 out of 5. That's pretty darn high, based on more than 1.7 million client reviews. And it's convenient. You can join a session with a therapist at the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. And remember, you can switch therapists at any time.
As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of experience. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/3ml. That's betterhelp.com/3ml. All right, Jim, a lot to get to wind up for this first one here, but let's try to do it quickly. The unrest in Los Angeles started on Friday when illegals and their allies in Los Angeles found out about a variety of ICE raids. That's when we first started seeing the rock throwing at ICE personnel, at ICE vehicles. The statement from acting ICE Director Todd Lyons was not encouraging in terms of cooperation from local authorities, just in keeping them safe. Forget assisting in the operation. Quote, our brave officers were vastly outnumbered as over 1,000 rioters surrounded and attacked a federal building. It took over 2 hours for the Los Angeles Police Department to respond, despite being called multiple times. The brave men and women of ICE were in Los Angeles arresting criminal illegal aliens, including gang members, drug traffickers, and those with a history of assault, cruelty to children, domestic violence, robbery, and smuggling, unquote. One of the ones they rounded up over the weekend is a guy named Quang Chong Phan, 49-year-old illegal alien from Vietnam. Back in 94, he and some fellow gang members were asked to leave a high school graduation party. They did, but came back with semi-automatic weapons and fired shots at 30 partygoers, killing 2 of them, wounding 7 others. And this is who the Democrats are all upset about possibly being deported from their country. And so the Democratic statements have been just as weak as you would fear. Mayor Karen Bass, who can't handle any crisis, obviously, quote, this is from Friday, this morning we received reports of federal immigration enforcement actions in multiple locations in Los Angeles. As mayor of a proud city of immigrants who contribute to our city in so many ways, I am deeply angered by what has taken place. These tactics sow terror in our communities and disrupt basic principles of safety in our city. My office is in close coordination with immigrant rights community organizations. We will not stand for this. So they're not worried about the ICE agents being attacked. They're worried about criminal illegals being rounded up. Gavin Newsom, Donald Trump has manufactured a crisis and is inflaming conditions by calling in the National Guard, as you probably know. If he can't solve it, we will. You're right. To the bad actors fueling Trump's flames, California will hold you accountable. Kamala Harris weighing in, Los Angeles is my home. And like so many Americans, I am appalled at what we are witnessing on the streets of our city. Deploying the National Guard is a dangerous escalation meant to provoke chaos. In addition to the recent ICE raids in Southern California and across our nation, it is part of the Trump administration's cruel, calculated agenda to spread panic and division. The administration's actions are not about public safety. They're about stoking fear of a community demanding dignity and due process. And she goes on a little bit more. But of course, so the bad guys, according to the Democrats here, Jim, are the ICE agents in the beginning and Trump for trying to restore order after the leftists and their allies have turned this thing into complete chaos over the last few days.
Yeah, before I dive into this answer, we should point out that this will be, the topic of more than one martini today. This is about the reaction from the malcontents in Los Angeles who are attacking ICE agents and the elected officials. If you're really upset about the coverage in the media, hang on, we'll get to it. But I also want to add, before I dive into the rest of some late breaking news, right before we went on air, Karen Bass was on CNN, was asked, I know you and your police force are preparing for the hours ahead. What are you expecting on that front? This is from, and she responds, I just have to say that if you dial back time and go to Friday, if immigration raids had not happened here, we would not have the disorder that went on last night. So her plan involves time travel, Greg. If you go back in time, we get the DeLorean, go back in time, stop ICE from making the raids, and then none of this stuff ever happens. So that's her best assessment of how to fix this. Not a single statement she made on Friday made any distinction between illegal immigrants and legal immigrants. Every one of them was talking about ICE arresting immigrants. Now, I think she thinks she's clever when she does this, to get people to believe that ICE is just running around, going after anybody. There is a difference between legal and illegal immigrants in law. In fact, it's right there in the name, legal and illegal. There's a difference of them in fact, and there's a difference of them in morality. There's nothing wrong with legally immigrating to a country. There is something wrong with illegally entering the country. It's proving everything that happened during the California wildfires was not an accident. This is all more of it. I also kind of wonder how, people are saying, wait a minute, you guys are small government conservatives. Why are you okay with Trump sending in the National Guard over the objections of Gavin Newsom? Well, it would be nice if of ICE agents, everyone involved in these raids and the federal building in downtown Los Angeles could count on the LAPD to do their jobs. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, there was this large crowd gathers on Friday. And I went and they said it took 2 hours for the Los Angeles Police Department to respond, despite being called multiple times. A slow response from the LAPD. Insert diehard joke here. All right, I just get it out of the way. But I just want to point out, this was the Roybal Federal Building. This is downtown. I went and I looked on a map. The Roybal Federal Building is 0.3 of a mile from LAPD headquarters. Right? You've seen it in Dragnet. You've seen it all over. You have the very distinctive building. It's an 8-minute walk from one spot to another. And it took them nearly 2 hours to respond? Come on. That doesn't happen by accident, right? These guys could stumble across it on their lunch hour. There's a Quiznos on the way. There's no good explanation for why it took the LAPD hours to get to a site that was just down the street. The other thing that I was struck by was the LAPD then at 7:26 Saturday issued a statement saying, quote, demonstrations across the city of Los Angeles remain peaceful. Today's events concluded without incident. Quite a few people were surprised by this because, about an hour earlier, Mayor Bass had to acknowledge that setting a car on fire in the middle of an intersection, blocking off streets, things like that, they're not peaceful and not protected by the First Amendment. What I think the LAPD is going to hang its hat on here is that the events that we saw on Saturday, the setting of the car on fire and the other unrest and violence, burning trash in the streets, that was occurring in Paramount and in Compton. Greg, how do you know the community of Compton? Straight Outta Compton by the Fellas with Attitude, except they didn't use fellas, was in their name back in the 1990s. So the argument, listeners probably know back from the coverage of the wildfires, Los Angeles is a city and Los Angeles is a county. Technically, Paramount and Compton are not within the city of Los Angeles, but they are within the county of Los Angeles. I looked on the map. Paramount is 4.4 miles from the city limits of Los Angeles City. So it wasn't really in the city of Los Angeles. It was just past it on the city limits. Now, I urge all listeners who have the privilege of encountering Ice Cube or Dr. Dre, tell them they're not really from Los Angeles and see how that works out for them. My suspicion is that they're not going to respond, indeed, you are correct. We are from outside the city limits and thus only from Los Angeles County. Now, I don't think they make that distinction, right? But I read this site, LAist, and they were really mad that national outlets seemed to think Paramount, where there was some violence reported, was located within the city of Los Angeles. Okay, you got us. It's not within the city limits. It's just outside the city limits. But as I put it, this is very comparable to saying that something happens in Bethesda, Maryland, or Arlington, Virginia, isn't technically within Washington. Okay, fine. It's within the greater Washington area. It's just outside the city limits. Kind of ridiculous. By the way, don't you think you kind of love the fact that villainization of ICE going on right now? The LAPD, not the most popular institution in the city, particularly amongst minority communities. Don't you think they're loving it? Hey, it's not us this time. We are not helping ICE. We are, every time we have beaten some minority with our batons, we have never inquired about their immigration status. We don't care if you're in the country legally or not when we're abusing you. We will always treat you equally, very badly, if we're LAPD. Based on this, by the way, I can never go to Los Angeles after this podcast, Greg.
Well, it's true. You're right, though, that the LAPD spent most of its PR efforts over certainly the first day, maybe even the first 2 days, just saying, we're not with ICE. We weren't helping them. We're not assisting with carrying out these raids. So I guess they were all working on the press release instead of actually responding to the violence happening here. And so nobody's responding to the actual violence, the rock throwing, the crashing of the windshields of these different ICE vehicles, lighting cars on fire. Everybody's afraid. They still think on the left that all immigrants want all illegals to stay. I think the last couple of election cycles are pretty clear evidence that that is not the case. And sadly, one of the people we thought would be a significant improvement over Karen Bass is not really helping either. Rick Caruso, who lost the mayor's race last time with really only 2 tweets on this, and both of them are disappointing. One says it's time to do what's right for our country and state. Undocumented people who are here for a number of years, have been contributing to our communities and economy, and have no criminal record deserve a pathway to citizenship. And he wants a meaningful discussion on that. And then he says yesterday, there's no emergency, widespread threat, or out-of-control violence in Los Angeles, and absolutely no danger that justifies deployment of the National Guard, military, or other federal force, which is curious because even the LAPD yesterday was saying this has gotten out of control.
Greg, what's Rick Caruso do for a living? He's a real estate developer?
He is, yeah.
Which involves a lot of construction?
Yes.
You sure every last person who works for any of those construction projects is legal? Okay, just sure. But one last detail for any of our listeners in Los Angeles: get out like Snake Plissken would be my first piece of advice. But the second thing is that they've now started ordering the Waymo driverless vehicles to an area, and then once they arrive, these angry protesters / rioters are setting them on fire, smashing the windshields and all that stuff. All of the Waymo vehicles that are driverless run on lithium-ion batteries. I went up and I looked it up on the website of the company. If their batteries are exposed to a fire or a high heat, they will release toxic vapors, including sulfuric acid, oxides of carbon, nickel, lithium, copper, and cobalt. Basically, they are mobile toxic bombs that you can basically order on your phone. It makes it very convenient for anybody who wants to cause a terrible thing there. So congratulations, revolutionaries. You probably got cancer.
Yeah. I haven't really cared about the environment. Yeah, that was all in Act 2, apparently. So, but media, you're next. Don't go anywhere. Oracle, in business, they say you have a better, cheaper, or faster, but you only get to pick 2. Well, what if you could have all 3 at the same time? And that's exactly what Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have since they upgraded to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And right now, with 0 commitment, you can try OCI for free. Visit oracle.com/martini.
How is it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. How is it cheaper? OCI costs up to 50% less for computing, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. How is it better? In test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and all of your biggest workloads.
Yeah, OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. Right now, again, with 0 commitment, try OCI for free. That's oracle.com/martini. Oracle.com/martini. One more time, oracle.com/martini. All right, Jim, you knew the media would automatically take sides here as soon as criminal illegals were clashing with ICE in the streets. ICE, as long as they're deployed by a Republican administration, is automatically the bad guy in this situation. We've got one example of local media and one example of national media. Here is ABC7 Los Angeles.
Large group of people. It could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there in the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation and altercation between officers and demonstrators.
Police, just hold back. These people are just having fun lighting cars on fire and watching them burn. I mean, come on, let kids be kids. And then Dana Bash yesterday on State of the Union talking with Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. You know, she's talking to a Republican because she won't let him talk. And then she's basically saying, oh, come on, I remember the LA riots. It's not as bad as that, so therefore it's no big deal.
I just want to just state for the record that what did happen in 1992 was so different from what we're seeing now. I mean, that was a real riot that went all across the city of Los Angeles after a verdict in the Rodney King case. This is a situation where the LA County Police,
Dana,
it's not good, but they're saying that they have it under control, and the president is sending national troops,
Dana,
federal troops, in a way that
we can look at
hasn't
this
been
and
done
we
in
can
a long
obviously
time.
see.
But Tea Partier so much as spit on the sidewalk. CNN was there with breaking news. So that all depends on the ideology and the cause of the people protesting. And if it's on the left, they'll excuse just about anything.
So, Greg, first of all, I want to take that first one. They're having fun watching cars burn. Now, we're getting footage from the news chopper. I couldn't see well. Did you see anyone with marshmallows? Did you see anybody? I did not see anyone making s'mores. So I don't really think this is, hey, everybody, let's have a campfire on the car fire and the electric cars with the toxic fumes that we just set off here. And for Dana, I'm going to say fact check true. Yesterday and the entire weekend was not as bad as the LA riots. That's a high bar to clear, right? Like there's a lot of January 6th probably was not quite as bad. Well, maybe, I have to go back look at the numbers. This is why we need a playoff system. You can't just rely on media ranking of these things. So, but I want to give listeners a little bit of a background look. So when something like this happens, and I knew by Saturday I had a feeling, this is probably going to be a big story. This is probably going to be the topic of Monday's Jolt. So I just start taking notes and stuff. And I always want to get to what actually happened. Yes, I'm going to put in the statements from Newsom, statements from Bass, statements from the president. But like what is actually happening on the ground that is causing this situation to escalate? And there are certain, when a story happens outside, let's say the Acela corridor, I always want to look to local news sources. I figure they have the best sources. I figure they have the best reporters on the ground to give me that. Los Angeles is an exception. And the frustrating thing was that during the wildfires, you get some pretty good coverage. On this one, it was very hard to figure out what was it that actually started these things. I want to read to you the opening sentence of an article published online by the LA NBC affiliate Friday afternoon. Quote, a group of people were seen outside of a business named Ambiance in the fashion district of downtown Los Angeles. End quote. Now, Greg, Hillsdale is an excellent institution. You're a fine product of that. I'm fairly certain at some point they say you need the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, sometimes the how. And I had it drilled into my head, active verbs, not passive voice. Yes.
Correct.
People were seen by whom? Why is this important? The very next sentence. Acela tells NBC4 that the FBI was working along with other federal agencies to serve a search warrant, which were signed by a judge because they have probable cause to believe this employer is using fictitious documents for some of its workers. Better, we now have some idea of why this. No, we don't bother to say that Acela is Bill Acela, the U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California, the chief federal. Like, if you tell people at the beginning who this person is, you have a better sense of why this person is telling you that. So what you're really mean is that, okay, the FBI was working with ICE to serve a search warrant at this business named Ambiance in the fashion district in downtown Los Angeles, and then a group of people congregated outside. All right, now I'm getting, but I shouldn't have to like play Sherlock Holmes, piecing things together from different art paragraphs of the article. Oh, this is what actually happened. Now, I don't think this was AI writing it, like that HHS report by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but I think this is just really bad journalism. It'd be a better excuse if it was AI, right? But it's very hard to get this stuff. And so what the end result is, you get because everybody gets blasted the press releases from Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom, you get the statements of, these, reckless ICE raids. Newsom kept saying chaotic federal sweeps. Well, what makes them chaotic? They are reckless as they are cruel. What makes them reckless and cruel? I'm open to the argument that there's something wrong about how they're doing these ICE raids. But you have to show me. You can't just assert that, particularly if you're Gavin Newsom or Karen Bass. You don't have credibility. You rarely have much credibility, but it went up in smoke with the LA fires earlier this year. So like what? Tell me, explain this. And it's just kind of asserted out there. Now you get ICE saying, look, we called LAPD and they didn't show up for 2 hours. Well, now we have really good reason to think that the entire city is like, it's not just we are not obligated to participate in ICE raids, which is true. Supreme Court said that the local authorities cannot enforce a federal immigration law. But it's a little bit different to also say we're just not going to do any of that. And I don't see any coverage in Los Angeles saying, why is the LAPD not protecting the federal building downtown? And if the LAPD and let's say California Highway Patrol, CHIPS, Ponch and John, if they're not showing up to protect the federal building downtown, who else is going to do it other than the National Guard? Are there enough FBI agents? Are they equipped to handle a large? Generally, I thought it was usually local cops who had riot police and all that kind of stuff. So, if you don't want the National Guard to do it, the LAPD's got to step in. I don't know, Greg. I think we're going to need some more FBI guys.
I think so too. And here's the thing: this probably would fit better into the first martini. But it's not exactly a shock that Trump would move pretty quickly to bring in the National Guard. Think about what happened 5 years ago. He sat there watching the city where he lived burn and a bunch of others around the country, and he basically tweeted out law and order, and we didn't get law and order. And so now he's acting more decisively. I would say that he's learned from this, so he wants to contain it, and it doesn't spread, especially when you're going to have ICE raids going on in different cities, and this could spread across the country. And the media just, of course, doesn't get that.
All of this is happening in the context of the post-George Floyd protests that turned into riots and the widespread perception that out of a fear of a backlash, out of a fear of being seen as on the side of Trump or on the side of the cops or on the side of authority, a whole bunch of Democratic mayors and governors chose not to intervene. And, innocent people paid the price for that. Among the people who really denounced the slow response of Minnesota's National Guard was Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who is the guy in charge of doing that. He's going to get the guy who's responsible for this. We're all trying to find the guy who did this, as the hot dog man says.
Yeah, well, that's basically what Gavin Newsom's saying, too. Trump's inflaming this. We're going to get these people responsible for inflaming this. It's you for not restoring law and order, Governor Newsom.
Can we also point out that not just Newsom, but also Adam Schiff, all of these Democratic lawmakers are saying, please don't be violent because that's what Trump wants you to do. Fact check true. Could anyone object to violence because it's wrong? Is that not enough of a reason? Is that not, it's bad optics for us. Okay, yeah, but that's not, and is this some sort of the reverse psychology? The only way you can actually deter someone from rioting is telling them this is going to help Donald Trump. Is this the litmus test for how somebody tells whether something's right or wrong? It's very infuriating.
Utterly maddening in so many different ways. And the people of Los Angeles suffer. You voted for these people. So some of this is on you, certainly. But they have not gotten good leadership in a lot of different ways, especially in the last few months out there. Well, I can tell you where you're not going to find radical, arson-filled left-wing protests. And that's the campus of Hillsdale College. That's because sanity still reigns at Hillsdale College, and they teach you the truth. Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, Karen Bass don't want you to know how good capitalism is. They'll tell you capitalism's evil. The people are greedy. It just so happens, though, that capitalism is the greatest economic system ever, and it's the reason that the vast majority of people on Earth aren't dirt poor, or at least far more are enjoying wealth than did a couple hundred years ago. And now Hillsdale College will teach you the finer points of capitalism with their brand new free online course, Understanding Capitalism.
Hillsdale College is offering more than 40 free online courses. That's right, free. You can learn about the U.S. Constitution, the stories in the book of Genesis, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic, or the history of the ancient Christian church with Hillsdale College's free online courses.
Yeah, you'll learn about the role of profit and loss, how human nature plays a role in our economic system, and the importance of private property rights, and so much more. Things I learned on campus, you'll learn them for free in Understanding Capitalism. So go right now to hillsdale.edu/martini to enroll in this course, Understanding Capitalism. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/martini to enroll for free. All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now, and a little bit of a palate cleanser, although it's still kind of infuriating given her relatively recent past. But Kirsten Gillibrand has a strategy. She has a strategy for helping the Democrats take back the Senate, and the odds of that are considerably steeper than the odds of Democrats taking back the House in 2026. The map is far more favorable to Republicans than the Democrats in terms of open seats, competitive seats, retirements, that sort of thing. We've talked about that a lot. But Gillibrand has a new plan. And according to Paul Kane over at the Washington Post, it says when she was an aspiring blue dog Democrat with a center-right cultural position record and helping make Nancy Pelosi speaker, and Jim Webb, who kind of had some of those pro-gun, not crazy on a lot of different issues, helped to make Harry Reid the majority leader back in that awful, awful election cycle of 2006. And now Senator Gillibrand is saying that's what a majority looks like, having center-right cultural positions, which is what Kirsten Gillibrand did have at that time when she was a member of the House of Representatives and running for the House of Representatives, until Hillary Clinton became Secretary of State, resigned the Senate seat, and then Gillibrand was appointed the senator by then Governor David Paterson. And then, like the flip of a light switch, Gillibrand abandoned every moderate position she ever had as soon as she got to the Senate, because she knew that that's where she probably needed to be to keep winning statewide. So she's trying to present herself now as the pro-blue dog approach to the midterm elections when she's the poster child for faking it to get where you want to go.
Yeah, she is correct on the facts. In fact, when you look at the frustration Republicans are having over the big, beautiful bill, small House majority, and it means you're reliant upon a handful of Republicans from New York State, New Jersey, and California, all of whom want the state and local tax deduction to go up really high. And you have to put that in there because otherwise you're not going to have enough votes to pass it in the House. And so if you want to have a big majority, you have to be willing to tolerate greater ideological diversity. That is just, you can't be ideologically uniform and get to 218 votes. It's almost impossible to do it that way. Your point about Kirsten Gillibrand is just that, like, her story is the opposite. Her story is someone who you could argue was pro-gun, representing a purplish district. Suddenly realized there was a possibility she could be selected to be Hillary's replacement in the Senate, and then instantaneously supported gay marriage, instantaneously opposed gun rights, and became a strong supporter of gun control. All of a sudden went down the line progressive, and never really had much of a good explanation as to, my thinking has evolved and all that stuff. You could even make an argument of, like, well, I represent all of New York State now, and I have to reflect the views of my constituents. I am struck by, first of all, the other big shocking news out of this is that Kirsten Gillibrand is still in the Senate representing New York. It's easy to have forgotten about that. I believe that once she was told, I'm just trying to get some rants at her appearance before the Iowa caucus, because Kirsten Gillibrand ran for president, and a lot of people probably have totally forgotten about that, the 2020 cycle. Another one who I believe did not make it to the year 2020, dropped out beforehand. I believe she dropped out the day after a corner post I wrote saying it was ridiculous that she was still in the race. So I'd like to think I was the one who did it, but I think it's pretty obvious the fact that she was at 1% for a long stretch. The thing that still sticks in my mind, I'm going to take you all the way back to October 2017. Vogue magazine, which, as we all know, is where you get the very finest political coverage, all through the filter of Anna Wintour, had a headline, 2020 vision, all eyes on Kirsten Gillibrand. Greg, do you remember in the year 2017 when all of your eyes, meaning two of them, were on Kirsten Gillibrand? No. There you go. This was all anybody could talk about was Kirsten Gillibrand and how she really looked like a strong presidential contender. Or that may have been the discussion in the Vogue office and really nowhere else. But and I read through this article, and it was just absolutely glowing and gushing and all that stuff. But what I was really struck by was how much it kept asserting things, that she was a unifier. No, she wasn't. That she had real appeal to red state voters. No, she didn't. That she was a policy innovator. No, she was it was like they had just asserted things. And then you look at her record, and once she was in the Senate, she was a standard issue progressive Democrat. And I would argue, like, such a generic standard issue progressive Democrat, nobody remembers the fact that she ran for president in 2020. Ironically, the only person that remembers is Tim Kaine, who, for listeners who have forgotten, was Hillary Clinton's running mate in 2016. And nobody remembers. And Saturday Night Live even did a sketch about the fact that nobody remembers. So Kirsten Gillibrand, the irony is her advice is probably pretty correct for Democrats, saying you have to be willing to accept more ideological diversity in your majority if you want to have a House majority and a Senate majority. And you probably need to allow your presidential candidate to deviate from party orthodoxy in a couple of things. I doubt people are going to listen to her because a significant portion of the Democratic Party has forgotten that she existed.
Yes. Quite a start to the week, Mr. Garrity, I would say. We will see what Tuesday has in store for us, but you will be out tomorrow and be back with us on Wednesday, so enjoy your day off, and I will see you again on Wednesday.
I will see you Wednesday, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos, Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you don't already, and tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a great Monday. Join us again Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.